good segue from hearing about the birds in Morialta to this project. Welcome everyone, I'm Simon, I'm an ecologist, recently graduated. I've been working on a bird project here in Wadmore Park. And to start it off, I've got a bird recording for us to listen to that was recorded from the park. Is there anyone who can have a guess of what we're hearing?
There was a magpie,
There's a magpie, that's the low-hanging fruit. Yes, that's the one, yeah. Grey shrike thrush. So they're both songbirds, yeah. Yeah.
You can do it really well. We tease them all the time.
Yeah, so that's one of the things I've been doing when I've been out there bird surveying, is I've got a little sound recorder that plugs into my phone, record the bird song. I've also been taking videos of birds, which you'll see here as well. So basically I've been a part of since I was young, I've been part of the Campbelltown Land Care Group, and they operate mainly in Wadmore Park, so that's this 30-hectare patch of bush at the base of Black Hill. So I've been a contractor for the Wadmore Park Puyallup Biodiversity Project, and it's supported by the Land Care Group's grant from the NRM, thanks to Steph, and also the Campbelltown City Council also got on board. So a bit of landscape context. You can see here the wider area where your group operates, Black Hill Morialta, and this enclosed zone is Wadmore Park. There we go, the point is working. So you can see that it's actually part of the Black Hill Morialta landscape, and that it's one of the best remaining examples of Adelaide Plains vegetation. We have most of the vegetation that's remaining is on the hills, but Wadmore Park is quite unique in that it's got this intact plains vegetation, whereas most of it's been cleared. And I've put the arrows here to show how it connects to other areas of the landscape. You've got a vegetation corridor to the River Torrens, and you've got these corridors here through to Black Hill. So, and the main objective of this study was there hadn't actually been a proper bird study done in Wadmore Park. There had been some previous studies, but they'd all kind of used different methods. And there is some citizen science data on BirdLife Australia's bird data. BirdLife Australia is Australia's conservation organisation for birds, and they have a program called Bird Data, which uses people's sightings of birds and surveys to build a collective data picture of birds. So for this baseline study, I wanted to use methods that were compatible with bird data's methods, so that it's more likely that people can continue doing those surveys and use those same methods. So I picked two kinds of survey methods. One of them is a census of the whole area. So that is the category of a 500-metre area search. So the whole of Wadmore Park, which is about 30 hectares, falls within 500 metres of a central point. So I was able to survey the whole park 6 times. It takes about 2 hours. And that gives us data about the number of birds living in the park, so the population that the park supports. But we also wanted to know what specific areas in the park, how that differs in terms of that, from their vegetation to the bird life. That's where this other survey method comes in, which is 20-minute surveys of 2-hectare patches of bush. But I had to kind of design those 2-hectare sites around where the existing trails are. So it was a bit of fiddling around on GIS and maps to figure out, but luckily there's this uncannily lots of areas that are almost pretty much exactly 2 hectares that are enclosed by tracks. So we're able to pick some sites in the northern areas of the park. See this area here looks a bit different to areas here. That's because this used to be a paddock. It's called Rainsies, and about 20 years ago it was gorilla planted with gum trees. So it's a really young woodland, young grassy woodland. So we've got some sites representing those areas, and other sites representing some of the more remnant patches of bush. and also some of the more recreational areas that still have habitats that are suitable for birds. So I've been doing both of these survey methods 6 times for each of these 10 plots between June to November this year. So this is the data from the census. So this is the population of each bird species that the park supports. And it's ordered in the order of how many there are. So we see that by far the most abundant bird is the rainbow lorikeet, which many of you will know. There's this is the average number of individuals recorded in each survey. There's over 100 rainbow lorikeets in the park. They are super abundant, and you'll see them especially flying around Foxfield Oval, these areas, and they nest in a lot of the trees, the big old red gums along the creek. And we see that as we go down in the order of abundance, there's about an average of 70 New Holland honeyeaters. That's a small native bird. That's white, black and yellow. I have also got a bird book here, so you feel free to come up and look at that. But the also thing here, we have superb fairy wren. Many of you will know it as the blue wren. It's a very common native bird. And the strided pardalote. It's good that the third and fourth most abundant birds in the park are small woodland birds. And that's really what we're looking for in an area of remnant vegetation on the plains that's surrounded by suburbia. Because Australia's birds are renowned for being aggressive. Particularly you've got your magpies and your noisy miners. They're really aggressive birds and they'll chase away smaller birds. So it's a really good sign that we have small woodland birds so close to suburbia that are protected by the habitat of Wadmore Park. And as we go down the order, we have less and less of some of these other small woodland birds. We have a lot of parrots in the reserve. We have 4 species of cockatoo, 3 species of lorikeets, and 2 species of rosellas. And they all use tree hollows for nesting, so it creates quite a lot of competition. And even going down to the birds that aren't often recorded in the park, including one time there was a wedge-tailed eagle flying overhead, probably from Black Hill, and we had this rare bird of prey show up called the square-tailed kite. Some of you may have heard it. Apparently they nest in Black Hill.
We don't know where they nest. We've never established that. We'd love to know where they nest.
So now it goes, and I was actually lucky enough, it showed up in one of the censuses, so I was lucky enough to be able to video it. And here he's being swooped by a magpie. Because the square-tailed kite, you can also hear the sulphur-crested cockatoos. They were going crazy because the magpies and sulphur-crested cockatoos, they're like the policemen of the bird community. They protect the smaller birds from birds of prey. Because this square-tailed kite, it's a predator of birds, and especially young birds in nests. It will find a bird's nest and go in and take its young. So that's why the whole bird community was really alarmed by the presence of this
Simon,
bird.
would you have any idea how many square-tailed kites there are left in South Australia? Because the information I read up on the website, on the internet recently, was that I think 2016 they thought there were only 10 left.
Right, I'm not sure. I've only seen it once before in the Adelaide area, near Mount Osmond, near where I live, on the hillside. And I've seen a pair in Pitchie Pass, near Port Augusta. And I also heard that they breed in Parawira as well.
So that one is probably a young from about 3 years ago, I think,
Okay,
from the Parawira pair.
from that nest.
From that pair.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That was the theory. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
But somewhere turned
Yeah,
up at the right time.
yeah, and it turned out the right time for my surveys. That's what also told me that I was doing enough surveys to be able to detect birds like this that you wouldn't get every day. So in terms of the total birds, I recorded a total of 57 species of birds And that's quite a good diversity for somewhere that's next to an urban area. 55 of them were from the daytime surveys, and I also did 2 nocturnal surveys and heard some bulbuk owl and tawny frogmouth. And one of the many birds that lives in the park is this black-faced cuckoo shrike. And so diversity within the park. Each of these areas within the park are mapped based on how many species of birds occurs in that area. And we found some gradients. Remember I was talking about the northern area of the park that's quite open and grassy because it used to be a paddock. That has substantially lower bird diversity than other areas of the park that have got much more remnant vegetation and also vegetation integrity. So on the left here, and this relates to the practice that land care groups do. This is the vegetation integrity surveys that were undertaken by the Campbelltown Land Care Group's weed contractor. So this is the 2005 survey, and they've got these little areas of red classed as excellent condition, and the yellow area is good condition. See, there's patches where there's this good understory of heathy plants and small plants. And you look at the 2015 surveys, and the area that's in excellent condition has really expanded, and that's thanks to the work of the Land Care Group and also their weed contractor. Part of the objective of this bird study is to see if there was a connection between what the Land Care Group was doing and what's happening with the bird biodiversity. And we see that it's quite low diversity here, and what the Land Care Group has been doing over the past couple of years is restoring undergrowth plants to this area, because at the moment it's just young gum trees and grass. So over years we hope to see, through the baseline study I'm doing and through further surveys, we want to see if planting shrubs in this area is going to encourage some of the smaller woodland birds into that area, thus increasing the diversity. And the survey also did include areas like Foxfield Oval. It was left off this map, but that's also classed as poor vegetation integrity or highly modified. But the Foxfield Oval was still a really good place for birds. You get lots of birds land on the grass and use the large red gums either side of the oval. And one of the key features of the bird community is honey eaters, and they feed on flowers of a variety of plants such as eucalypts, banksias and grevilleas. And they're also pollinators, so that's why another objective of knowing what the honeyeaters are doing in the park, because they provide pollination services for the plants. Now we want, especially from a land care group's perspective, we want to know that the plants in the park are being pollinated so that they can set viable seed and germinate naturally. Because if this wasn't happening, then the plants would senesce, and then the land care groups would have to continually plant to replace. So we want the native vegetation to be self-replacing. So there's several species of honeyeaters in the park, most common being the New Holland honeyeater and also the red wattlebird, which is this one with the chicken-like, they call them bush chickens. So there is a pecking order of honeyeaters in the park. The larger, more aggressive red wattlebird will be aggressive towards the New Holland honeyeater, which is smaller, but the New Holland honeyeater, they hang out in groups, so they're also quite aggressive. So they will, in turn, chase out the smaller honeyeater called the eastern spinebill. And that's quite a small honeyeater that has a really long curved bill. It's this one at the top. And its long curved bill is adapted to probe into small tubular flowers. Now normally in ecology you'd think that the smaller birds would be more abundant and the larger birds there'd be less of them, right? But actually no, there's only ever one or two eastern spinebill in the park at any one given time, whereas we have 70 New Holland honeyeaters. And that's because of this aggressive nature of the birds. But also, I think it's also because of the patchiness of Wadmore. It's just a small patch of bushland, whereas other areas of Black Hill are more heathy. There's more shrub cover for the spine-bills to hide from the more aggressive honey-eaters. So I suspect that Black Hill Moriata area is a stronghold for the eastern spinebill and many other smaller birds. Also in the park, I've recorded infrequent visits of other honey-eaters, most likely coming down from Black Hill. Honey-eaters like the yellow-faced honey-eater, the brown-headed and the white-naped honey-eater, only recorded once or twice in the park, but it's good to know that they visit the park. Although they might not live in Wadmore Park permanently, at least we know that they come down from Black Hill and use the area. And I might also point out this honey-eater, which is on the logo of the Campbelltown Landcare Group, is the black-chinned honey-eater. And that used to be in Wadmore Park. Members of the Landcare Group who lived in the area for decades remember it there when they were younger. But now it's extinct, locally extinct from the area. I think it's only found in a few places in the southern Fleurieu. So it really shows the importance of Landcare groups maintaining their local environment, but also people out there monitoring what species are there and how they're doing. So the area of Wadmore Park, it's in a bit of an ecotone because it's connected to the Black Hill Moriata area of native vegetation, but itself it occurs on the Adelaide Plains, which is similar to other areas of the Adelaide Plains and the Barossa. So we get a mix of birds coming into Wadmore Park. It's like this ecotone. We have birds coming down from Black Hill, and we have birds coming down from the Barossa or the northern Adelaide Plains. And one of the species that comes down is this white-winged triller. You don't often see it in the Adelaide area. We also have the restless flycatcher in the park. We have a pair that were in the park over winter, and you have to go quite far out of the city to normally see them. We also have the rufous whistler that prefers drier woodlands and is not really present up in the higher parts of the Adelaide Hills. So this is the white-winged triller. Unfortunately, there was a chainsaw or something. Yeah, so that's as a bird watcher, that's a really exciting bird to have show up in your surveys, and it just adds to the value of the park. And that another bird I'm talking about is the rufous whistler. So they have a nice call, just like the shrike thrush, only a bit high pitched. The raven in there as well. Now I mentioned earlier about tree hollow nesting birds. If you remember looking back at this map, the area here that was planted with young gum trees hasn't got many tree hollows at all, because eucalypts take up to 100 years to develop tree hollows. Whereas other areas of the park, like along Fifth Creek, have lots of red gums where some of the trees would have 50 to 100 hollows. So one of the things that the Landcare Group has done over the years is install some bird boxes in the open area of bushland that doesn't have many tree hollows. And these are actually made by my uncle. So my uncle's a retired builder, so he built them. This is one that was only put up this year. We put this bird box up in June, and already it's being used by a pair of eastern rosellas. And you can see here, this is the chick of the eastern rosella just poking its head out of the box. And we also heard them flapping inside the box. And that was a few days before that 41-degree day, so we were hoping that they flew out before then, otherwise they would have cooked in the box. So we also have lots of other parrots, like these rainbow lorikeets that use the natural hollows in the red gums especially. And just throughout the winter and breeding season, there's lots of squawking around the trees. The birds are all fighting for the hollows to use. So that's why our group thought it was a good idea to install some artificial hollows. And this top bird here is a tree martin. It's a bit like a swallow. It flies in the air, catches insects, and they nest in little tree hollows like this one. You can see its young there in the hollow. Yeah, so hollows are really important because Australia's wildlife has the largest dependency on tree hollows in the world. But it's not just in trees that birds nest, they also nest in the ground. Now this is a spotted pardalote who's made a nest in this bank of earth in the park. You see it's very wary before it goes into its hole. You see it kick up a bit of dirt as it goes in. And we also have human impacts in the park. I guess like if you're familiar with Morialta, there's a lot of human use of the area, a lot of people walking through the area. The same as Wadmore Park, as it's surrounded by suburbia and there's lots of walking trails through it. So this is one occasion where I just started to video these common bronzewing on a path, and then and I guess on the subject of people, because it is an area that's frequented by people, I'd often be in the park walking around doing surveys, and I'd bump into people who were, say, walking their dog or just taking a walk around the park, and they'd tell me, we'd start having a chat about birds. Sometimes they tell me about the birds they see without knowing that I'm doing surveys there. So yeah, and that's what was also an objective of the project, was to establish this baseline that the community can contribute to. So that's why the survey techniques I've been using have been the same as the citizen science tool bird data. This last Sunday actually we had a community bird workshop at the park where I shared the results of the surveys, which we have printed out and laminated, so I'll pass these around for you to look at. Yes, in this workshop I basically presented to the Landcare group and also to the wider community of people who were interested to learn about the bird life in the park. And then we also walked around and I showed everyone how to do a survey, how to conduct a survey of a 2-hectare area, and also develop some material to assist people in like a how-to guide of conducting a bird survey within the park. And our next project would be to create a guide to the birds of Wadmore Park to bridge that gap between people's existing knowledge of birds up to the level where they're able to undertake a survey. But luckily with the bird data survey methods, you don't have to know what every species is to be able to contribute to the data.
Son, what is the resource you referred to earlier in the book? What is that?
This is the Morecambe Field Guide to Birds.
Uh-huh.
There's also an app that you can get on your phone that corresponds to the book, and the app also has the bird calls. Yeah.
What's that?
That's
What's the name?
Morecambe.
Is that your preferred guide? Do
Um,
you have a favourite?
Yeah, that's like.
I do prefer this one.
Yeah.
There is the Simpson and Day guide is also good.
I
There's,
like the fizzy and
yeah.
I like the busy and night
So
out.
many. That's right, yeah.
I like to start with it.
Yeah. And the app that we're using is called Bird Data. It hasn't got double D, it's just BIRDATA. You can either log your surveys online or on the downloadable app. So if you're interested in, if you already know some of your birds and you want to start surveying, or you want to start doing bird data stuff in Black Hill Morialta, come and see me afterwards. I'll give you one of these guide sheets about how to conduct surveys. Yeah, but I think I'll leave it at that. So thanks for having me here. And